Hello and welcome to Politics Today. I'm Farrukh Patafi. Viewers, you have been seeing our constant coverage of situation in Kashmir. Last time when I interviewed somebody in detail about Kashmir, a lot of things were still to actually transpire. Since then, a lot of things have happened, and today we are going to do justice to that as well. We have covered so far Article 370, Article 35A, and we have actually covered a lot of ground. But the UNSC session, and then, of course, the decision of Pakistan to go to ICJ, International Court of Justice, are the matters which need a lot of attention. Then we have seen a responsible kind of attitude coming from New Delhi, where the Indian Defense Minister has actually talked openly of scrapping the no first use policy. That is important because it was thought that since India has the conventional upper hand, so to speak, in defense, it won't resort to the nuclear threat or blackmail. But we saw that happen, and after that, Donald Trump, President of the US, has also spoken to the two leaders of Pakistan and India. We are going to talk about these things and more, and in order to help us understand these issues, I don't think there's any better resource, any better guest than the guest I have right now, the President of Azad Jammu and Kashmir, Sardar Masood Khan Sahab. Thank you very much, sir, for taking our time.
Thank you for having me.
Sir, let us begin by talking about what has happened since then, last we spoke. Particularly, Pakistan has taken the matter to the UNSC, and India tries to put a spin on it. What is your take, since you have worked as a diplomat as well, sir?
It was important for Pakistan and the people of Jammu and Kashmir that the issue was raised once again at the Security Council. Why? Because India had violated the United Nations Security Council resolutions. It had violated flagrantly the United Nations Charter, the Fourth Geneva Convention, and various articles of international humanitarian law. So it was important for Pakistan to take this matter to the Security Council, where it belongs in the first place, because the Security Council decades ago had passed resolutions mandating that the issue of Jammu and Kashmir should be resolved in accordance with the wishes of the Kashmiri people under the supervision of the United Nations through a referendum. That referendum has not been held. But the steps that were taken by India on August the 5th, they defied the United Nations, the international community. What did they do? They, in fact, said that this land that belonged to the people of the occupied territory doesn't belong to them anymore, that this land would be confiscated by the Indian government or the Indian Union, and these areas which were bifurcated, Ladakh and Jammu and Kashmir, they were made union territories like municipalities which would be governed by Delhi. And they deployed 180,000 troops in addition to the 700,000 troops that they already had there, and they practically invaded the territory of the occupied Kashmir. So this matter then pertained to A, peace and security, second, human rights violations, a genocide which had been started, a communication blockade, a humanitarian crisis, but because people were being forced to starvation and there were no medicines, so there was a humanitarian crisis of a big proportion. So we rightfully, the government of Pakistan rightfully took the matter to the Security Council, and the Security Council deliberated on the matter. So this referral to the Security Council and the deliberations there were important both symbolically and substantively.
Right. Now that Pakistan has taken matter there, the question then that comes to mind is of India's hectic lobbying. We have seen India actually playing its part, trying to lobby the P5 countries against Pakistan, didn't succeed. That's why the meeting held. But do you think that there is a responsibility of the P5 countries and UNSC to actually keep the focus on what is happening in Kashmir right now?
Absolutely, they have a responsibility. We are grateful to China, a permanent member of the Security Council, which listened to Pakistan's appeal and facilitated this meeting of the Security Council. We're also grateful to the other 4 Security Council members who did not block that meeting. I mean, they are veto-wielding powers, and they could have done that, but they did not do that. And as you have mentioned, India lobbied aggressively before the convening of this meeting, and they failed. I would also like to add that although the Foreign Minister of Pakistan had approached the President of the Security Council to hold such a meeting, in the first instance, it was the responsibility of the Security Council to convene this meeting. They should have done so on August the 5th or August the 6th, and there should have been an open meeting in an open chamber, because there was an emergency unfolding in Kashmir. The occupied territory had been attacked, and I enumerated all other things that happened. So they should have, it is their responsibility in accordance with the Charter. Article 1 of the Charter, the very first article, makes it imperative for the Security Council to intervene and intercede wherever there is a serious threat to peace and security. And there is a serious threat to peace and security. But let me tell you that now that this informal meeting behind closed doors has already taken place, the onus should not be on Pakistan or the people of Jammu and Kashmir or the global citizens to agitate for a meeting. The Security Council should continue to be seized of the matter, and they should take several steps. I would say that they should take steps. I mean, the Council should speak up. They should take steps to diffuse the tensions, also save the people of Jammu and Kashmir, because before their very eyes, before the eyes of the Security Council or the international community, a genocide or a massacre is taking place. And all fundamental freedoms or basic rights of the Kashmiris are being trampled with impunity by the occupation forces.
Right. You, sir, you spoke about the responsibility of the UNSC. And of course, since we are now talking about a nuclear South Asia, where we have seen the kind of rhetoric that keeps on coming from New Delhi, we are going to talk about that as well. But since we don't see that kind of a proactive role coming from UNSC or elsewhere, do you think that it is not underwhelming for people who believe in the international system, who believe in some kind of rule-based international order, sir?
Yes, I think that the international order that was shaped after the Second World War and which was defined by the United Nations and the United Nations Charter is under threat because realpolitik is dominating decision-making at the highest levels. And in fact, people are constrained to take right decisions because of their economic and strategic interests tied with India. And as you know, that in the recent past, we witnessed that liberal order that governed the world is on the retreat. It is, and there is this rise of ethnic nationalism in Europe, in the United States, and there is this Hindu nationalism or fascism which has emerged in India. What is the bottom line of all these nationalisms? It is might is right. Go ahead, trample the rights of the people with impunity, and you are not accountable to anybody, to the international community. So this aggravating steps that India has taken, they also are a defiance of the system that has shaped the destiny of the nations in the decolonization period. What India has done, I mean, surprisingly, that we thought that in the past century, the era of decolonization or colonization had come to an end.
Right.
And that the entire world was decolonized. Of course, there were two territories, Palestine and Kashmir, which were under occupation. But India practically moved on August the 5th this year to colonize the territory. annex it. And so, you know, the world was so complacent and so confident about end of the colonial era that you do not have trusteeship council, or that the committee, the fourth committee which deals with decolonization, is only dealing with the after effects of decolonization, not actually colonized territories. So you have raised another important point, very important point. I mean, this nuclear posturing that has been done by India recently by Rajnath Singh, and it also imperils the peace and security, not just of South Asia, but of the entire world.
Especially because India's current government actually believes in this shock and awe doctrine, where it keeps on pushing the rhetoric and actions also all the time. The problem right now is that how are we to know that tomorrow, when they find out that they are in a difficult position in Kashmir, they are not going to resort to nuclear violence?
You know, they have started many wars, first against their own Indian Muslims. They've threatened them with annihilation, and they're saying that if you do not believe in Hindu nationalism, just leave the territory, the Indian territory. The second is they have invaded, literally invaded the occupied territory of Kashmir, and the people whom they have invaded, they are unarmed, non-combatants, civilians, and they are trying to colonize that territory by bringing Hindus from all over India and settling them there, and robbing them of their jobs and rights to education and owning property and permanent residence. So this is another war.
Right.
The third war is in fact across the line of control. They are killing our civilians, including with cluster munitions, and this affects some 540,000 people living across the line of control on this side, on the Azad Kashmir side. Sure. And the fourth war is that they are directly threatening Pakistan with a war, including a nuclear war. And the fifth war is the proxy wars that they have unleashed in the entire territory of Pakistan, and they are sponsoring terrorism. So what I'm saying is that in addition to that, I mean, although they have already started these 5 wars, which should be put in the conventional realm or sub-conventional realm, now they are threatening Pakistan with a nuclear war. And there can be many motives. Right. One is that they want to create
new normal?
They want to divert attention from what they're doing in Kashmir, divert the attention of the Security Council or the international community, so that they create a smoke screen, and behind that smoke screen they go ahead with the steps that they are going to take to colonize the occupied territory, so that the entire international community's attention is riveted on peace and security and a nuclear escalation and a nuclear Armageddon in this region, and they can get away with murder in Kashmir.
Right. Don't you think, sir, that this might have actually backfired? Because before that, we didn't see Donald Trump or other world leaders speaking to both leaders. And now it seems that there is an effort to de-escalate this situation. By actually shooting his mouth, the Indian defense minister might have actually hurt his own cause rather than anybody else's.
I think they've done so deliberately. They will continue to do it. You would recall that in February this year, Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, had threatened Pakistan with the use of nuclear weapons. Earlier in 2016, their Defense Minister, Manohar Parrikar, had threatened Pakistan with the use of nuclear weapons, and he'd also said that he would send terrorists across the border to Pakistan to destabilize or implode the territory of Pakistan. So, I mean, they are doing so deliberately, and this is highly irresponsible. But what is disappointing is that the world is not taking cognizance of these aggressive and aggravating statements.
Right.
I mean, one thing that happened in the aftermath of the steps India took on August the 5th is that the world press, the print media, or the Western countries, or television networks, or all news portals, new media or the traditional media, they have been supportive. They have condemned India's actions. They have supported the cause of the Kashmiris. They have spoken up for the rights of the Kashmiris. They have written article after article, op-ed after op-ed, and many editorials condemning the communication blockade that has been imposed on the people of Kashmir.
Right.
So I think that you were talking about the context that are there between President Donald Trump and Mr. Narendra Modi and the Prime Minister of Pakistan. I would say that we have to be very cautious because India is again deluding the United States. The conversation, they read out of the conversation that we got through the press, it says that Narendra Modi made 2 points, with 3 points as a matter of fact. 1 point was that he said that there are some provocative statements from the neighborhood which are vitiating the atmosphere. Oh, for God's sake, you invade Kashmir and you say that there is a provocative statement from Pakistan which is vitiating the atmosphere. Second, they said that from across the border, terrorists are coming. And where are those terrorists? You say it without any substantiation. And the third, he says that, Mr. President, our trade talks are stalled and let's revive them. So he says that you need not focus on Kashmir or the security situation in South Asia. Why don't we do some deals on our mutual commercial and economic interests?
Right.
So we have to be very careful. And I have clarified to the people, talking to the media, I've said that, look, what President Trump is doing right now is not mediation. The kind of mediation that he promised during our Prime Minister's visit to Washington some weeks ago. He is only facilitating contact.
Yeah.
But some people said that, is it positive or negative? And I said it is positive because the United States, after all, is also a member of the Permanent Five. It's the most powerful nation on earth, and they also have veto, and therefore we need their involvement at various levels. In the Security Council, outside the Security Council, for contacts, for communication.
Right. Since you mentioned the readout of what transpired or what went on between Narendra Modi and President Donald Trump, of course, it all is reaching us through two sources. One, India's own official sources. Second, India's media. And the problem is that Indian media now, at this moment, seems to be divorced from reality. But you were right about international media's role that they have played. Earlier, in the previous program, you also spoke about the fear of demographic change, forced demographic change in Kashmir. Right now, we know that the valley and the most parts of Kashmir still remain in lockdown. How important is the role of international media to maintain transparency and to ensure that the world keeps on seeing that India doesn't do anything nefarious in Kashmir?
It is very important. The international media has been very vigilant and supportive, and we are thankful to them. In fact, they heard the voices of the Kashmiris. They spoke up for the rights of the Kashmiris, so we're grateful to them. Constant vigilance is required. Let me also tell you that Indians are waiting that situation would normalize. They would stage manage some elections. They would probably appoint or foist hand-picked so-called elected representatives. Yeah. But as I said earlier, they've reduced Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh to union territories or to the level of municipalities, so that they have their direct writ on the territory, which will have no legitimacy because it's a disputed area in accordance with the United Nations Security Council resolutions. But let me tell you, the vicious plan is to settle people from outside.
Right. Also
redefine and delimit the constituencies to reduce Muslim majority to a minority. They're also taking several other steps. I mean, for instance, they are giving permanent residence to the so-called West Pakistan refugees and refugees from Azad Kashmir. They have they've started constructing Pandit colonies and colonies for the former armed personnel. So what you would have, that you would have a moth-eaten Kashmir, which is pock-marked. In fact, I mean, there will be Kashmir, but this land would not belong to the people of Kashmir. And they have also prepared to unleash terror, massive terror against Kashmiris. And that's why they're bringing Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh operatives, the Sangh Parivars operatives, who have been given licensed ammunition. As a matter of fact, I mean, there are village defense committees in Kashmir, and then they are going to manipulate with the statistics. They are also going to increase the number of elected members for Pandits in the valley, and also give some in Jammu. They are going to give some 8 seats to these refugees and so on. But let me tell you that the massacre would be on such a high scale, it would be so brutal that they would deliberately try to push all these Kashmiri Muslims towards the line of control, so that they could create another wave of refugees, outflows of refugees and migrants.
So do you think media's role in maintaining transparency and keeping focus on how Kashmiris are is important?
Yes, India would like to commit all these crimes against humanity under a thick pall of secrecy and blackouts. I mean, they would not like to share this information with the rest of the world. They've taken a risk. They think that they would brutalize the people of Jammu and Kashmir. They would silence them, and after a while, there would be business as usual. There would be no resistance. But let me tell you that there is massive resistance. They have, so far, according to the information that we have received, they have detained 6,000 people.
6,000?
Yes.
Because AFP was reporting
4,000.
Yeah.
But informal channels suggest that the number is much higher, and the detainees include children of all ages. Some very young girls have been tortured in Kashmir. They've been manhandled, and these detainees have kept in cages and temporary shelters, and now they're being transferred. They have been transferred to Delhi or many parts of northern India. So, and this is one thing. And I can tell you that in Ladakh, which is particularly in the Kargil region, in the whole valley of Jammu and Kashmir, and in 5 districts of Jammu, there's massive resistance, and people have defied these curfews. Although this is the entire Kashmir, the Jammu and Kashmir territory, is under siege, and soldiers are posted outside
every house. Yeah.
So what I want to say is that we are seeing a textbook case of genocide, ethnic cleansing, crimes against humanity, human rights violations, and war crimes. And this is happening before the very eyes of the international community. Let me also talk about a disconnect. The disconnect is that while the Office of the High Commissioner reported these violations last year and followed up with another report this year, and international human rights organizations like Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, Physicians for Human Rights, they also chronicled what was happening in Kashmir.
Right.
And now the Western press has extensively covered India's brutalities.
Right.
And yet the
Response
major
is
parts
important.
are the official Washington, official Brussels, and official London are tight-lipped, or they issue these ambiguous statements.
Right. And we are going to talk about that ambiguity, and especially India's attempt to actually shift focus of world community towards conflict between India and Pakistan rather than human rights. But we have to take a small break, if you allow me. We have to take a small break. When we come back, we are going to resume discussion right from where we left. Take a break. Welcome back. Before going to the break, we were talking to the president of Azad Jammu and Kashmir. Let us come back to the conversation and ask Mr. President, you earlier said that India keeps on trying to shift focus from human rights abuses to a conflict between India and Pakistan. Do you think that the world is so gullible and it is not capable of multitasking that India will manage to pull this off?
The world is not gullible, but it is definitely amenable to India's machinations and manipulations in their own interest, because their economic and strategic interests are tied with India. That includes the United States, the Western countries, the European Union, and many of the Gulf states. And that's not a surprise for us, because this trend has been developing for the past several years. And the people of Pakistan look very disappointed, but there is little that they can do about it. This kind of solidarity with India at a time when they had robbed the Kashmiris of their rights and they are brutalizing their brothers and sisters in faith. So no gullibility on the part of the international community. In fact, astute and shrewd defense of their own interests. Right. But let me tell you that, let me take you back to the 20th century. Sure. What happened during the interwar period? There were these dictators emerging, and they were elected by democratic processes. That includes Hitler, that includes Mussolini, and then they mainstreamed in their own states Nazism and fascism. Right. And what happened? What was the international community doing at that time? I'll tell you, the international community was doing what it is doing today vis-a-vis India.
Appeasement?
Yes, appeasement. Try to please them, try to coax them into good behavior and so on. Did it succeed? No, it did not. It in fact fed the monster and it emboldened those dictators. And then they started attacking their neighbors. And they started a world war in which a Holocaust took place. Today in Kashmir, a Holocaust is taking place. This Holocaust has been taking place for the past 72 years, but there has been no Nuremberg trial for the people of Jammu and Kashmir. Right. Let me tell you that the most sinister, extremist, violent extremist philosophy of our times has taken roots in India. And it is being steered and led by Narendra Modi, his BJP, Bharatiya Janata Party, and this party's affiliates, which are Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, Bajrang Dal, Shiv Sena, and Vishwa Hindu Parishad. Right. Now, what is their philosophy? That you have to be a Hindu. And Pakistan committed a cardinal sin by claiming or carving out a separate state for itself in Akhand Bharat. And they say that if you are non-Muslim, you will be punished. Right. You'll be punished by people, and those people who would punish you, who would kill you, who would maim you, who would torture you, who would persecute you, they are above law. Sure. That they would have immunity from prosecution. And even if they are prosecuted, they would be freed. This has happened in the recent past in case of many people who had been attacked for just eating
one of them was killed, yes. And now they let go of the entire cabal that attacked him.
That's right. Yeah. So that is what we are facing. And we need to tell the world that as Nazism was disastrous for the world, so is Hindutva, so is Hindu nationalism. And these Hindu nationalists are not hiding their aims and objectives. They're saying that we will attack Pakistan, we'll eliminate Pakistan.
Not only Pakistan, actually they now talk about even Bangladesh. They talk about the entire Akhand Bharat, which includes South Asia.
Yes, and I don't see any signs that this kind of rhetoric has roiled or riled the Western capitals.
Yeah, but with due respect, earlier you said that while talking to Donald Trump, Narendra Modi complained about the rhetoric that was coming from Islamabad. Yes. And that was precisely the discussion he was mentioning, that Pakistan actually very effectively has been able to draw parallels between Hitler and what Narendra Modi is doing. That means whatever you are saying, sir, actually is having an effect. It must be hurting him. That's why he's complaining about this matter.
Now, India is a big country. Its population is 1.3 billion. It's a big chunk of the world population. And Indians said for years, decades, that it was a secular, liberal state, that secularism was the glue that united India, and the world believed in them. And the world thought that 1.3 billion people living in India were all Gandhis in miniature. But they are now seeing the violent face of India. Now let me tell you,
the Kautilya's and
yes,
Chandragupta Maurya's of
yes,
India.
but what the enlightened Indians, I mean, whether they belong to the Congress party or other opposition parties, or they belong to civil society or to the media, they are writing constantly that the steps Narendra Modi has taken in Kashmir and their Hindutva is an anathema to India's existence as a state. Yeah. They are warning that the steps that they have taken vis-a-vis Kashmir, if they had, in the first place, they would not have taken those steps if the province or the state concerned was of Hindu majority. Right. But they say that he has, Mr. Narendra Modi, by taking these steps, has sown the seeds for centrifugal forces, right. Centrifugal forces, and and that it is a threat to Indian Union or Indian Federation. Yeah. As far as I'm concerned, India has started off a civilizational war against Muslims, not just in Kashmir or India or Pakistan, but all over the world. Right. And India has practically planted these bombs, time bombs, in Kashmir and the whole of India and the entire region, which would explode.
Yeah. Now you have actually spoken about 6 wars that Narendra Modi is waging, and then you're talking about this civilizational war around the world as well. But people, for that matter, say that Narendra Modi's government has actually carried out another surgical strike on his own nationhood, his own country. That everything that existed there, from secularism to federalism to socialism, they all existed because there was a need. India is such a divided country. A, it has too many ethnicities. B, it has too many religions. C, it has too many caste systems. And they have systematically started abolishing all those nuances. Doing that would mean that India eventually is going to evaporate. Do you agree with this idea or not?
Well, I don't want to speculate about that, but
why not?
No, but let me come to that. I mean, we talk too much about India.
Why are Pakistanis so polite? Or Kashmiris so polite?
No, I'm not polite. Let me come to that point later. But let me tell you first that we talk too much about India. And what is the justification? And I'd say the justification is that India is aggressor, right. That India is brutalizing the Kashmiri people, that India is threatening Pakistan, and that's why we talk about India. As far as Pakistan is concerned, it has taken the right steps. And I would say that we must forge unity amongst our ranks. And in the recent past, I mean, you have seen the parliament, the government, the entire state of Pakistan, they have demonstrated unity. We should go back to the international organizations, and recently we have gone back to the international organizations and the international community. We should leverage the strengths of our diaspora community, and we have done that in the recent past. The international diaspora community of Pakistan and Kashmiri extraction has demonstrated all over the world, joined by their compatriots in their new countries. I think that in the field of communication, Pakistanis and Kashmiris have done better. Right. They have written op-eds in one of the in the mainstream papers. So. But I think that along with this, we must also focus on building Pakistan as a strong nation, economically, politically, and strategically. That's also a priority that
has to be done, sir. But earlier you were talking about reaching out to Pakistan's own diaspora. At this moment, it seems that the kind of India that Narendra Modi is building is not Nehruvian or, for that matter, Gandhian India. It is M.S. Golwalkar's or RSS's India. Perhaps Indian diaspora also feels disconnected also. Is it time that Pakistan reaches out to Indian diaspora as well?
We should reach out to the Indian diaspora, but more importantly, we should reach out to the Indian citizens. Right. Because when India won independence, it reached out to the British citizens to win support for freedom of the Indians. We should do the same. I mean, the Kashmiris and Pakistanis should do the same, and they should go to India and reach out to the people who are sensible. But let me tell you, a question that you asked earlier, and I was not parrying that question. Now is the moment or the right time to respond to that question. And let me respond to that question about the integrity of India and whether it is liable to disintegration. Now, here is the thing. Europe, if you look at Europe for an outsider, it is a monolith. It's all Christendom. They're all Christians. So why are there separate states there? You have Germany and France, and you have Portugal and Spain, and some of them are Catholic countries. Why can't they form a Catholic state? Right. India right now is propagating the myth of Hindu majoritarianism. And they are saying that there are no four classes, that Brahmins and Dalits and Shudras are in fact the same people and they have the same DNA. But without going into the genealogical history of such claims, let me also tell you that if you trample people's rights, you cannot create such artificial states. So by such outrageous steps that India has taken, it cannot consolidate Hindu majority, because you want to build this edifice on the bones and blood of the Muslims of India and through an occupation of the Kashmiri territory. Right. So this is, I don't want to go beyond that, but I would say that this would accentuate the fragility of the Indian Federation.
Right. Thank you very much for that answer, because I've asked other dignitaries also, and I've found that Pakistanis are usually, or Azad Kashmir people are also restrained when it comes to this talk. India is very irresponsible, but you have shown your wisdom as well in that. There's another argument that one has to actually look at. Before we go to ICJ's issues, I wanted to ask you that there is a whole lot of people who say that Pakistan is perhaps not doing anything substantial, and in fact India is not going to actually see the logic if you keep on resorting to peaceful means, and Pakistan eventually will have to resort to kinetic means. What would you say to them, sir?
You see, this is time for reflection and self-introspection. In the past, I think that we made several mistakes, and one of the most serious mistakes was that we chose the path of bilateral talks with India. With a cunning adversary like India, we sat on the same table with Indians, and they just deluded you. They would not talk about Kashmir substantively, and they would try to sabotage the entire process, or they would clutter the agenda with other issues, trade and religious tourism and so on, and water, and complicate the whole thing so that they distract your attention from Kashmir. And in the meantime, they were brutalizing the people of Jammu and Kashmir so that they could consolidate their occupation there. And they were biding time. Or they turned around and said that we can't talk to you on Kashmir because you are terrorists or you're sponsoring terrorism. So India's stance right from the beginning was very deceitful, very self-serving. So that is one of the mistakes that we have committed, and now the entire nation has woken up, including the leadership, and they have chosen to go back to the international community. Right. It should have been that way for the past 4 decades. I mean, why is it that before 1971, Kashmir used to be the core issue between India and Pakistan, and now it is 1 out of 10 issues as far as the bilateral agenda is concerned. But your question was different. Would you?
I actually want to come back to that, because there are people who are emotional, think that a lot is going on in Kashmir. Human right abuses on the Indian side, India, under Indian occupation.
Let me address the question that you had earlier. Kinetic.
Yeah,
Kinetic.
and this is what I'm building up
Yes.
to.
Yes,
that,
please.
Pakistan has to actually see this side, that India is not going to stop violating the human rights of Kashmiris till the time Pakistan resort to a war. And this is the argument.
A war is being imposed on you. I talked about 6 types of war that are being imposed on Pakistan.
Right.
Now, what do? I mean, of course, you have to be prepared. Like the people in Azad Kashmir, Gilgit-Baltistan, the whole of Pakistan, we are prepared. And I have said it on several occasions that Gilgit-Baltistan and Azad Kashmir, this is a defensive rampart for Pakistan. This is very important. And India mustn't forget that these areas were liberated by its own people through a war of independence in Azad Kashmir and in Gilgit-Baltistan. And now Rajnath Singh has the temerity to talk about the so-called Pakistan-occupied Kashmir.
Yeah.
This is Azad Kashmir. This is sacrilege as far as I'm concerned, that our territory is territory of shaheeds and ghazis, martyrs. And therefore, they should know the terrain, they should know the people, and they should not talk about our territories so lightly. Because I have reminded people that when in 1947 and 1948, when Indian occupation troops intended to cross over to the Azad Jammu and Kashmir territory in Gilgit-Baltistan, at that time, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru reportedly warned his commanders, don't cross over to that territory because this might well become your graveyard.
Okay.
So
wow.
I would say...
That's quite a quotation.
Yes. So they should not dare do that, and they should not boast about it or speak about it, because they'll have to pay the price. As a matter of fact, because of the aggravating steps that India has taken, the entire territory of Jammu and Kashmir, the people there in Pakistan, they are seething with anger, and they want to retaliate. And I mean, you talk to young men and they want to resort to militant means. They usually taunt and heckle politicians who are talking about diplomatic and political support to the people of Jammu and Kashmir. They say that this has not worked for the past 72 years and this is not going to work. But we would demonstrate restraint and responsibility. We will fight a war which is only defensive in its character, not an offensive war. We do not want war. And we know that the Kashmir dispute cannot be resolved through military means. Contrast the approaches that Pakistan and India has taken. India is saying, or India has been practicing that use state terrorism, use brute force against the Kashmiris, and you would subjugate them, and you would kill their voices of dissent forever. They haven't succeeded. We say, don't do that. Stop killing Kashmiris. Come to the negotiating table. Come to the peace table, for God's sake. Involve the United Nations, which is the highest forum in the world for peacemaking and peace building. So what I want to say is that, and this is a message to young men and women of Pakistan and Azad Kashmir, and also sympathizers of the people of Jammu and Kashmir, that we do not want a war. Right now our strength is that these 14 million people, out of which about 10 million people are Muslims, in Jammu and Kashmir, they have locked down 880,000 troops without arms. Right. According to the Indian security officials, there are only 250 so-called militants, ill-trained, ill-equipped. Okay. And they need 880,000 troops to face them, but actually they are afraid of the strength of these 14 million people who do not want any kind of relationship with India.
Right. Now, finally, let us talk about the decision to go to ICJ. It was believed that if you go approach ICJ, ICJ first seeks approval of both the countries, their consent, and then it has to actually see whether the countries in question or parties in question accept its jurisdiction or not. India has not been accepting this jurisdiction in the past as well. What convinces you that this time situation will be different, or our prayer is different?
Well, I don't know what India would do or how it would respond to such a move by Pakistan, but let me tell you that hypothetically speaking, if India tries to respond positively, as we did in case of the Kulbhushan Yadav case, in that case, scenario building, let me tell you that there are three things that have to be done. I mean, three aspects of the Kashmir dispute. First, the ongoing carnage and genocide. We have to resort the authority of this World Court to stop it, because this is crime against humanity that is being committed every day. Second is to reverse the steps, the illegal and illegitimate steps that India has taken unilaterally and without the consent of the people of Jammu and Kashmir, and defying the UN Security Council resolutions. I would caution, and this would be in fact decided by the Attorney General and the Law Minister of Pakistan, but I would caution that we should not take the third point, which is the right to self-determination of the people of Jammu and Kashmir, to the ICJ. Right. Because that has already been settled by the United Nations Security Council. Right. And we should not put a question mark on it under any circumstances.
Right. And that is a fair point, because victories that you have already accomplished cannot be actually risked or squandered, right? But finally, after this point, I have to ask you, how do you anticipate responses from ICJ, UNSC in the future? What exactly is it going to do to the faith of Pakistani people in the international system?
You see, as far as the ICJ is concerned, they have to go to the legal minutiae, the justifiability of such a petition, and so on. And I do not want to speculate, because our legal team has to prepare a case, and they have to consult all the stakeholders within the state in Pakistan. But let me talk about the United Nations Security Council or the General Assembly or the Human Rights Council. They must be proactive. They should not wait for communications from Pakistan, because the world press is writing about it, and I think that the United Nations Secretary General's office remains very well informed about the developments in regard to peace and security, or threats to peace and security all over the world. If they are so sharply focused on conflicts in Africa, why is it that they are partly deaf or fully deaf about the situation in the Indian occupied territory? So they should wake up, for God's sake, and they should invoke these articles of the United Nations Charter and initiate action to stop this ethnic cleansing in Kashmir, and also to intercede. I mean, why can't the Secretary General, for instance, appoint a full-time special envoy on the situation in Jammu and Kashmir? If there can be one on South Sudan or one on Central African Republic, here Kashmir is burning and people are dying because of this prolonged curfew.
And there's a risk to the life of over 10, 12 million people.
Yes.
And that is a humongous number.
And I have time and again emphasized this point, that if there can be a humanitarian corridor, international humanitarian corridor in Yemen and in Sudan and in Syria and in Iraq and Libya and other turbulent places, why can't there be an international humanitarian corridor supported by the international human rights organizations and these humanitarian organizations in Kashmir, in the Indian occupied Kashmir? Why aren't these spiritual organizations spread all over the world, urging the world organizations to move into Kashmir?
Right. I know I said that the previous question is going to be the last one, but I want you to, through this program, address the Indian citizens as well, what they can do. Because we believe, everybody believes that they are human beings everywhere and they have had the similar kind of sentiments. Do you want to give any message to the Indian citizens as well?
I want to give my messages to two sets of people. One is to the people of Jammu and Kashmir. We know that you have once again been invaded and you have been brutalized and your land is being snatched and you're being killed and maimed and tortured and you are being dishonored and you are detained and your plight is unspeakable. But I want to assure you that the people of Azad Kashmir and the people of Pakistan and a growing number of international community, we are all with you. We express full solidarity with you and we shall not rest until you get your freedom and your right to self-determination. Speaking directly to the Indian citizens, I would say that you uphold, I understand, and I have this strong belief that there are hundreds of millions of people in India who respect human rights, who respect civil liberties and fundamental freedoms, and who respect a world order that would give justice to the people of Jammu and Kashmir. I am thankful to the people who are already writing about the plight of the Kashmiris and demanding realization of the right to self-determination of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. But I would appeal to you to create a wave of public sentiment for the people of Kashmir because they are suffering and they are part of humanity. They live on this planet and they are human beings as all other human beings are. Come to their rescue, to whichever political party or to whichever civil society group you belong. Thank you so much.
Right, sir. On that very positive message, I'm told that we have to conclude the program. Sardar Masood Khan Sahab, President, Azad Jammu and Kashmir, thank you very much for your time. Viewers, you have listened to the interview. You have listened to the President of Azad Jammu and Kashmir. Of course, we'll keep on informing you on day-to-day development in Kashmir, and we will try to actually bring the matters to the fore as much as possible. This was today's program. Thank you very much for watching us. Take care.